Hello everybody, welcome back to the Mindcrack server. First solo episode in some time. I have a lot of episodes, supposed to do weekly episodes, and then grad school and sports and other life events got in the way, so hoping the next 2 weeks or so here will catch back up with all the, not only the Mindcrack, but also the Baldur's Gate 3 streams that I owe the people. So, I prioritized doing Halo with Fell and now J-Dub, it seems, because those are things with other people, along with the game nights that I can go to, although we're totally spotty attendance there. So, but I'm done with my classes for the rest of the year, so things should be pretty good there. Here's our ender chest. Gaze upon its glory. A lot of stuff that will remain locked down. So we have one more armor trim left. That is fighting the Guardians. Not quite ready for that, I don't think. These are very good design. A little too far to do what I was doing though. So, I think plans maybe fight blazes. We really want water breathing potions. So it might be time to start on being the brew crew. Is that the portal up there? Or to do that, we're gonna need some more blase rods. It's still a long ways to go. 645. Not even halfway yet. Close, not quite though. So what all there's to talk about? Since it just got dark outside, let's talk about something. I want to talk about this, and then, the time is long since passed, but we're still going to talk about it. Let's talk about daylight savings time. The thing that unites Americans by our hatred of having to change the clocks. I'm here to put forward a defense of daylight savings. Now, I understand that sunrise, sunset times are a little different based on where you live. Okay? But I'm just going to talk about the experience that I have here in Denver. So, sunrise is going to be at 6:52 a.m. and sunset at 4:39 p.m. tomorrow. If we were still on permanent daylight savings time, the sun wouldn't rise until 7:15 a.m. 7:52. I'm looking to see where the blaze is, but I don't remember it being this way. Take book. That'd be a dip move. So basically, during the winter months, the sun. So everybody wants permanent daylight savings time. These are like, man, I hate so much that it gets dark early in the winter. I hate it, and it does suck. But then you've got to deal with. I'm really not seeing it, am I? Redacted. I really shouldn't have started talking about this before it was time to concentrate flipping through books, huh? Oh, it was this way. Okay, well, look for the sign. But I am going to counter with this argument. I think the sun rising at 8 a.m. would suck even harder. Okay? it would suck even more because, you're already demotivated enough in the morning to get up and, go on your commute to work or school if you're still a kid. Like, that's already shitty enough, right? Imagine if it was pitch black when you were doing that, right? It was just totally dark. And you're arriving at school, and a lot of schools and places start at 7:50 a.m. Now, obviously, people would say, well, there's an obvious solution to this, and it's make school start later. This is a lot bigger deal. You know what? Let's just take a stack. Let's not be judicious. That's a lot bigger deal, a lot tougher sell than I think people might initially realize, because so much of how our life and society is structured is around things happening at these times, right? Like, in that case, a lot of times work doesn't start till 9 a.m. Well, I don't know. I that might be true, I've heard, on the East Coast some places. But for everybody here, I think most places work starts at 8. So, school will be starting an hour later. And a lot of times, how are kids getting to school? Well, their parents have to take them to school. Or they'd have to leave for work and leave their kids by themselves to then go and get on the bus. Right? See, this isn't as simple as you think. Because if work starts before parents, and then if you push everything even later, then there's so many other things, like when play starts or events or dinner or time. Like, I don't really think that is an option. Okay, in order to get home or do something I want to do this episode, we go this way. I don't have the boots, so what am I doing? Like, that's a lot rougher sell. And not to mention, the coordination of, like, after school sports and activities that will then be pushed later, and that will bleed into other things, like, the schedule that's set up for primetime TV. And before you say that's stupid, there's some primetime TV that pretty much every American likes, whether it's sports or reality shows or something. Most people are watching something. And a lot of people may argue that this doesn't matter. Probably people that are antisocial, which is fine. But, what are they going to do about when Jeopardy airs? Well, some places it already airs in the afternoon, which sounds like lunacy. But, yeah, I don't think that's as easy a sell as you think it is. And listen, here's the true answer. The U.S. is at a high enough latitude that winter just sucks, light-wise. But we pay for it with amazing summers. And now if you ask me, why don't you want to do standard time year-round? Well, then the sun would be rising at like 4:30 in the morning. And nobody's up then. I mean, don't you want more light from people who are actually awake? I think a big myth is that it's all about, like, farmers. I think that it has fuck all to do with farmers, daylight savings time. That's a myth. And, there's some arguments against it. They're like, well, this messes up people's circadian rhythms and people die. I don't know. Listen. If I'm old enough that the clock changing 1 hour will fucking kill me, it was going badly, okay? It was going badly. I'm sorry to everyone out there, but I have to speak my truth. It was not going well. The border tunnel. God, we're gonna have to go debris mining one of these days. Been trying to avoid that. So I'm sorry, but we tried daylight savings time because of the oil crisis to save energy in the 70s, we did permanent daylight savings time. And guess what? Everybody despised it. It was a disaster. People hated it. Because it sucks. Okay. So, you know, there's no good solution here. Why are there so many of these assholes? 7582. Okay. Do I have an auto shell yet? Oh Lord. Nope. So that's what I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you that daylight savings time is okay, actually. But I'll tell you the other real thing is I don't want Colorado to change anything and then be like Arizona where we're separate from the rest of the country, because that's just confusing and annoying for everybody involved. Like, Arizona's like, oh, well, you see, we never do daylight savings time in the first place. You idiots. But they're permanently on standard time, which isn't even what people want. People want it to be on daylight savings time perfectly. That's not what Arizona does. Arizona's on standard time. And you know, Arizona, you can get away with it because you're just farther south enough that there's just a little more, there's a little more light to go around. So just to make everyone clear, standard time is right now, the winter. This is what like the true time is, where like the sun is in its peak. The sun is in its peak of the sky at noon, as God intended. That's what standard time is. Daylight savings time, we cheat. And we move it so the sun peaks at like 1 p.m. Too many fucking mobs, honestly. Here. So people don't even know what they want. That's the moral. People don't know what they want. They don't understand. Do husks not burn? Obviously not. News to me. Two of these assholes. So many mobs when you're just by yourself. Yeah, so if you are steadfast in your anti-daylight savings time posture. Dude, aren't you... Okay, good. It was the cactus, not the man. I ask you to consider the options. And I got down because I said, listen, if we did permanent daylight savings time, the sun would rise at 8 a.m. And a guy in Reddit was like, well, that's just part of winter. That's like complaining there's snow in winter. I'm like, no, it's not, because if we didn't ever invent daylight savings time, the sun would never rise at 8 a.m. It would rise at 7 a.m. like it does now under standard time. If the sun rose at 8 a.m., that would be because humans, we decided to cheat. Cheat God's intended time. Okay. So I think that's why it's never going to get changed, because it's just one of those things, you know. It's just a shitty compromise for everybody. Yeah, listen, the vibes are different. when it gets started. And of course, everybody started coming and read their own things like, well, during the summer, there's too much sun because I'm trying to watch TV at like 6 p.m. and there's a glare. Wish the sun would set already. Or I'm trying to tell my daughter to go to bed and she's like 5. And she's like, no, Dad, it's still... It's just like, you know. This is just how it has to be, okay? This is how it's got to be. If anything, my purest part of my brain says that we should do standard time all year round because that's what time actually is. But then in the summer, it's like why waste an hour of sunlight at an ungodly time of the morning? I don't know. Doesn't make sense to me. So there you go. That was my daylight savings time diatribe. You know, diatribe, it's one of those words where it's like, I understand intellectually what diatribe means, but if I'd be asked to give you a dictionary definition, I'm not sure I'd nail it. I think it's probably just like a rant. If y'all can figure out what my plan is yet. Really? This long? Which fucking sandstone is there? Good lord. Too much. That's how much. There'll never be anything except sandstone. There's some actual stone. Thank you. What don't we need? Empty bottle, stone pick, crappy bow. All right, let's pivot. Let's pivot to another topic. Thanksgiving, November 23rd, is the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. Pretty sick. Doctor Who, as everybody knows, the world's premier entertainment program. And what is so great about Doctor Who is all the history and how it all matters, but it doesn't matter in a way that's, bogged down by lore and continuity. It's really just about characters and things like that. All good stuff. This Monday, we got a little mini quick Children in Need, which is like an annual charity telethon in Britain with, kind of a weird-ish name because it's British. And just a very quick comedy sketch. And in it, the Doctor accidentally travels back to the creation of the original Dalek, and turns out he came up with the name and came up with the plunger arm, which is kind of funny and honestly fitting considering the relationship between the Doctor and the Daleks. That checks out to me. I want to talk about something that I do not know terribly much about, which is always a great sign to start a conversation, especially as a white man on the internet, but here we go. Let's talk about ableism. So, 50 years ago, just about, in one of the most famous Doctor Who stories ever was Genesis of the Daleks, which depicted the creation of the Daleks and featured the previously not known about central figure in this, a guy named Davros, who then appeared in every subsequent Dalek story in the classic series and has shown up in the crazy blockbuster Goo Goo Gaga Series 4 finale with David Tennant's Doctor, and then the premiere two-parter of Doctor Who's finest season ever in 2015 with Peter Capaldi. So Davros's design is a disfigured dude. He's got all, molted skin and stuff, and a cybernetic eye. Sitting, and I'm sure everyone's kind of has a past familiarity with what the Daleks look like. And then you've got him, and he's just kind of sitting in like the bottom half of a Dalek. Now, to me, and I think most people watching, they all assume the design made sense. It's a very kind of good, creepy monster design, and that the creator of the Daleks would be like half person, half Dalek. That checks out, right? And obviously you can't have like a person... like a person's legs and the Dalek head, it's got to be like the centaur way, how Davros is. It's a very, very iconic design. And in this sketch, we see Sir Davros, and we see him just as a standard human, vaguely Emperor Palpatine looking dude. Now, if you want to get super into the lore, it's easy enough to say Davros at some point was a normal guy, and he was in an accident, which is why he looks the way that he does. And a lot of the spin-off material, the expanded universe material, which is always up to get countermanded far quicker than any TV episode, that he had the accident happen to him, and then kind of basing it off of what he then created to move around. That's where he was able to come up with like the Dalek design, which kind of makes sense. Now, what the comments by... Man, we have a lot... Oh my gosh, we have so much concrete left. Look at me getting a jump on the concrete. Now, the comments from the once and now again showrunner of Doctor Who, T. Davies, on the Davros change, said it was not merely him saying that was Davros pre-accident. He says, this is what Davros looks like now. And he's very proud about this, because the previous design of Davros was emphasizing that a trope of like disabled people equals evil. And this is something that for most of us in the fan base, this had never occurred to us. I mean, Davros was evil because he was basically a space Nazi. Like, I never even really put too much thought into him being in a wheelchair. I guess it's not. I mean, it doesn't even look like a conventional wheelchair. Again, it looks like the bottom half of the Dalek. I just assume, it's just like half Dalek, That makes sense. And after thinking about it for a while, I think that RTD is on to something here about how a lot of times, and again, a few seasons later in the classic series I'm describing, one of the most famous and at the time well-loved and regarded episodes, The Talons of Wang Chang, has very egregious yellow face in it. And so every once in a while, the Doctor Who magazine does a massive poll of every Doctor Who story ever. This year, Heaven Sent won the correct story to win. Apparently, the 50th anniversary won last year, which was hella recency bias, because that was like the most recent episode when they ran the poll. But the key finding, I think, in all of this is to say that, yeah, I think RTD kind of has a point. And I know this has been all these kind of things around disability are very controversial in how fictional characters are portrayed. Like, one of the most famous Batman comics ever is The Killing Joke. And, potentially maybe the most famous Batman comic, like the definitive Batman versus Joker story. And in The Killing Joke, the Joker paralyzes Commissioner Gordon's daughter, Barbara Gordon, which everybody said was like, it's horrible. It's bad. Like, well, why are you doing this to a female character? It's almost kind of the equivalent of fridging, which I think refers to when, like, Hank Pym's wife is just, like, dead, stuffed in a fridge, where, female characters' fates are used as plot motivations to basically incite the male characters to do something by, brutally murdering them or something. So when you think about that, but what my point was after that, Barbara Gordon became, like, even though she was paralyzed in a wheelchair, she still became like a really important superhero, like key figure in helping Batman, all this stuff, and it ended up being like a really positive example of, like, a female disabled superhero, right? So that's why people aren't fully out on the whole Barbara Gordon thing. So these are important things to keep in mind, I think. Oh, there's so much cool. Yeah, this is all, so where am I going to again? -7582, okay. And, thinking about this more, and one of, I think, the funniest scenes of the aforementioned last Stavros' appearance is the Doctor essentially does steal his wheelchair, and he glides in to meet the Daleks on it, sipping a cup of tea, and has a force field so they can't kill him. And he says, like, face it, you've all had this exact nightmare. And it's really funny, and it's a good scene. I like the scene. It's some of the greatest line where he just pulls out a warm cup of tea, and he's like, where did I get the tea? Don't question. I'm the Doctor. Great. We love that. And then when I mentioned that in the Galfair, somebody poured out, oh, you like the scene where, like, the Doctor literally, like, steals a guy's wheelchair? And I thought, that's actually kind of an interesting point. But I will say I'm still not out on it because, again, this is an extremely evil person. There's a similar scene where most recently the Master, who was impersonating a Nazi, and he was played by an Indian actor, and he essentially said he was disguising what his skin color looked like, because you might remember this, but the Nazis were very racist. And the Doctor basically, like, shuts that ability off, so the Nazis arrest him for not being white. Yeah, why did they do that? Why did that make its way into the show? Like, that's like, at some point somebody should have, pulled Chris Chibnall, the writer of that episode, and director, the actors, or, aside and said, hey, don't you think that's it's a little weird? It's a little cringe. Don't want to be doing that. I think that's worse than the Davros thing, by the way, because, But again, I wasn't, like, appalled, because this was happening to the Master, who not only is a super evil villain, was also extremely competent enough to probably escape from that predicament in about 30 minutes. But it is very much a, like, WTF moment. They did get me to consider things, and maybe, I don't know what was in the mind of Terry Nation 50 years ago. Was he just thinking, I'll make a half human, half Dalek? Did it cross his mind that, Davros didn't have to be disfigured either, right? And honestly, because of like the fact that, giving the Dalek someone to talk kind of has half a human body, kind of ends up looking like a wheelchair. The fact that Davros is just like hideously disfigured too, so ugly dude equals monster. There's also issues there, but I mean, also look at Emperor Palpatine and the Force lightning. But then you can also say it's like, well, guess what? There are going to be disabled people who are villains and are heroes because they're people like everybody else. Pandas. That's something Torchwood does so well, is that pretty much everybody in Torchwood is gay. Whether they are a good guy or a bad guy. So you get all the good guys are gay and all the bad guys are gay. So no issues there. This raises like, wait, well, we can't have, bad guys that are disabled. And generally, this was not even something that was like on the fan base's radar. Like maybe somebody had this take in the past, but I doubt anybody was sitting around thinking like, hey, isn't Davros in a wheelchair and that's problematic? Like, no, I don't think so. But that's also how things evolve. So you know what? I may be convinced, but there's other parts of it. The design of Davros has become so iconic, and then you kind of turned him into just like super generic evil scientist, right? I think it would be a shame to lose all of that distinctiveness. The one thing that I don't want RTD to try and convince us is like, no, Davros always just looked like the normal scientist dude. Like if you really want to do this, if Davros shows up again, it's sci-fi. You can say some line like, listen, my old body was dying and I worked for, decades because Davros, I don't know, he's very old. He's definitely been around the block. And I have created I created a clone body for myself to restore me to my original glory. You know what? I'm here for it. Just don't try and, don't try and pretend that Davros didn't look like Davros always did for 50 years. All right, that's all I got to say. That's all I got to say on that topic. Whew. And we still have ways to go. I think my next video will be talking about Gardax discusses the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I think that's long enough to be its own episode. So what should I talk about? I went to an NFL football game. Went to Vikings at Broncos at Mile High Stadium. Sunday Night Football night game, which was really cool because, especially for like the hype intro, everybody had little wristbands that, LED wristbands the stadium could control. So, but before the game, they turned all the lights off for the scoreboard, and everybody's wristbands were flashing the Broncos colors of orange and blue. They were playing AC/DC, and there's always people that parachute into the stadium just to raise the hype every single game. But their parachutes were lit up with like, kind of orange lights as they came in during. It was a night jump. Some cool stuff. The NFL game day experience was a lot of fun. I think, as I talked about in previous videos, about that more people should experience. You know, I know NFL games are expensive, but just kind of any in-person live experience versus just sitting home watching TV. And 2 weeks before that, I went to the Air Force versus Army game also at Mile High Stadium, because that would be fun to see two military academy schools playing each other. And yeah, the Air Force Academy is in Colorado Springs, just 90 minutes south of Denver. But going to games that are kind of sucks because there's only one. I think there's two actually, but one's on the south side, so everybody from Denver uses the north exit because that just makes sense. Man, I'm in denial. I do have to go to 8,000, right? This is, yeah. Thunder. Yeah, playing that AC/DC. That was less fun because Air Force was actually ranked in the first college football playoff ranking. They were undefeated, and there was, talk swirling of Coda Air Force being the Orange Bowl, which is a bit as the best non-major college football program give out to a major bowl game, and then Army absolutely just shit on them. I mean, scored ripped off a big running touchdown right away. We're ahead the entire game, forcing Air Force to play aggressive, which led to a lot of turnovers. Air Force had 6 turnovers, 3 failed fourth downs. It was so bad. And then they lost their next game too. So I think that dream is dead. But hey, maybe they'll still end up in the Mountain West Championship, win a conference title. And in that game, Air Force didn't score a touchdown. They'd only managed a field goal. And the Broncos at least managed, I don't know, because it was 21 minus 6. Yeah, so we're sitting at 15. So, yeah, five field goals. 5 field goals. I went with a very good friend of mine who flew in, who's a Vikings fan. Came out for the game, and it was a ton of fun. And it was more fun because the Broncos won somehow, barely. The win probability was even more dramatic than I expected. It was near the end, it was 85% to 90% Vikings. And then the last 2 minutes, it went all Denver. And after giving up 70 points in a game, I guess the equivalent for 70 points, because that was 10 touchdowns. I was against the Miami Dolphins, as everybody knows, this soccer's team, who he is very unserious about. Gave up 70 points, which being 10 touchdowns is essentially the equivalent of getting beat. And we scored 20. Right? So, we essentially kind of got beat 10-3 in soccer terms, mainly for comp who's watching, just give him some perspective. It was mainly basically a 10-3 loss, and nobody had given up 70 points in the game since before the moon landing in 1966. I mean, Miami put their backups in, and their backups were still hitting bombs for touchdowns. And then suddenly the Broncos defense is good now. I think by DVOA it said they're 10th since our first 5 games, 10th best defense in the NFL in the second half of the games we played so far. But overall, we're still ranked dead last. That's how bad the defense was. Defense was so bad that we've now had that same amount of games playing 10th as the 10th best defense. And overall in the season, we're still ranked as the worst defense in the NFL because those first 5 games were just that bad. Yeah. But the Broncos got it done, and somehow Russell Wilson has better second half stats than Patrick fucking Mahomes, the best quarterback in football. How does that make sense? And that's not even that big of a compliment to Russ. It's more like, what the fuck is going on with the Chiefs? They've been shut out in the second half 3 consecutive games. One was to us, the Broncos. They'd beat us 16 straight times coming into that game. And then they're shut out in the second half in Germany to the Dolphins. And they're kind of lucky to win the Dolphins game. They had a fumble return touchdown in the first half. That was the deciding margin. And then they lost to the Eagles in the Super Bowl rematch, the first team to lose a immediate Super Bowl rematch in at least the last 5 rematches over 25 years. Those are always just a bit random if Super Bowl rematches are on the schedule or not. I so wish I had shears or time to deal with you, but I do not. Gotta keep running. 4,000 more blocks. Yeah, I went out that portal specifically because I knew about the desert. To bring some green back. It's not even gonna be enough, really. I should have taken some actual cactus with me. But I didn't. Like an idiot. So, you know. Do what we can. Can always go back and do another round of green things. Because apparently we have lots of concrete on the menu. Or thinking of things I should do back there. But I want to make an ender chest. This is just giving more content for the future. So that was fun. Left on Monday. Work today, taking Wednesday off, celebrating Doctor Who, Thanksgiving. Very providential, that's all happening at the same time. 50th anniversary very much was not on Thanksgiving. I believe it fell on the preceding Saturday. Because I remember I went to a speech and debate tournament, and as luck would have it, the speech and debate tournament was a very rare, weird split squad tournament where there were no finals. And normally if you're double entered in an event, which I often was, I did a Lincoln Douglas debate in whichever extemp speaking was offered as like either national or international extemp. Usually different meets rotated which one was kind of the opposite flight for LD. And I do whichever extemp. But this tournament had extemp fully in the morning and LD fully at night. So I said, I'm not doing LD. I just do my 3 rounds of extemp and I can leave. Because these tournaments also all start at 8 a.m. Again, in the wintertime. And they often run until late at night. So we'll leave that portal for the people. My earlier daylight savings time comments. Anyway, so I did those 3 rounds. I remember I, rushed home, got home just in time because for the 50th anniversary, I mean, when I started watching Doctor Who, like, at the beginning of 2013, I had no idea that it was, like, the 50th anniversary of the show, and there was this big deal. I mean, the hype surrounding it was, like, off the charts. Like, you had to see this episode, and somehow it did deliver. It absolutely delivered on the hype. A very rare thing to do. Gave the people what they wanted and what they didn't know they wanted, which is what all the best stories should do. That's why I cringe. You see things like saying, oh, thank God all media today is now made just for the fans. You know what we fans want? We just want as many references as you can jam into something. The more references, the better. That's what media is. It's just a series of references. So you can point the screen and be like, oh, I remember that. And listen, I'm not saying you know, Doctor Who doesn't oftentimes have a shit ton of references in it, but they're done in such a but they're the references are never like the focus of the entire story, right? It's always just if you happen to be like a super expert, you can chuckle and nod and be like, "Oh yeah." But if you don't know what it's talking about, it literally doesn't matter. So I could. What other movies? I saw Killers of the Flower Moon. Fabulous, just a really well told story. Just an honest to goodness movie. You know, just having a good, unfortunately very depressing and true real story to tell, an important story to tell that I didn't know much about the Osage people in Oklahoma. Just a great movie. I will leave my Marvels discussion for the MCU episode. Then I also saw Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the Hunger Games prequel, based off the Hunger Games prequel book that Suzanne Collins wrote about President Snow's rise to power. And I really liked it. It's a very, and I've heard from people saying it follows the book very closely, including in structure. And it's a very bold movie. You know, it gives you your typical climax, and then it pulls the rug out from under you and gives you a very kind of dark ending, which is very appropriate. I loved how kind of like retro everything felt, even though it's supposed to be set a post-apocalyptic future. You know, setting it as a prequel, everything, you know, all the technology and architecture feels very like, you know, high 60s fashion. I thought that was very fun. Yeah, it was a good movie. I could recommend. Saw something saying they're like, well, obviously studio executives don't want this just to be a random one-off movie. Here's what I'm gonna say about that. Don't you fucking dare make a movie that Suzanne Collins hasn't written yet. Don't do it. Don't go off script and just start making shit that Suzanne Collins hasn't done. I know approximately zero things about Suzanne Collins, but it seems to me that she is a very intelligent writer. I mean, okay. And I say, trust the process. You know what? I don't have time for this. There's probably nothing good in there anyway. Oh, I really don't have time for this now. Goodbye. Trust Suzanne. It's also definitely a theme of these movies. You know, the protagonist of this movie becomes the main villain of the whole series. About, you know, female power and different ways that women are perceived and how that's a detriment, or sometimes women are able to, you know, weaponize that to their own advantage. Like Katniss constantly saying, "Oh, I'm just in love. I'm just in love. I'm just such a dumb young lovebird." And so I wasn't really being a rebel against the Capitol. I was just being dumb. Or how Snow is able to use the beauty and especially the singing skills of Lucy Gray, who is the trainee that he is supposed to mentor in the very early Hunger Games, which is kind of fun. He's now, kind of Hunger Games books are famous for having, the arenas were these very complex creations, right? Like the famous clock in Catching Fire, these massive sprawling things that were all intricately designed by the game makers. But it apparently used to be they just take a bunch of kids, they just put them in an arena with a bunch of weapons, they just have a bunch of people sitting there threatening to shoot them and kill all of them unless they battled each other. Yeah, as is the problem at the beginning of the movie, pretty shitty television. It remind me a bit of, talking about people getting bad edits on Survivor or something, where like, see what happens when you do stuff? You get attention. But yeah, anyway, Snow is able to weaponize kind of popularity based on, traditionally feminine things. But then the way that's kind of gets used against him, I thought was very smart. Back half of the book. Well, I don't really know about the book, do I, of the movie. I remember hearing the prequel came out, and I was like, And it was like during the pandemic and stuff, so, I didn't read it. I'm pretty sure I read the original Hunger Games books once a long time ago. I don't think I did. I remember just thinking, a lot of people say that, like, Catching Fire is, like, the most well-written book. At the time, I was like, wait, your idea for a sequel is just that she's in the Hunger Games again? That's what she got? Great. I know that they've kind of become the backbone of your teenage girl, dystopian fan fiction era. But yeah, Hunger Games good. Hunger Games good, and it's all very thoughtful. We should climb this. It's when you think about it deeper. There's a good story there. So I'm hoping on Sunday to go see Napoleon, Ridley Scott, Joaquin Phoenix, back at it again. Joaquin Phoenix playing Napoleon, and Ridley Scott's on a all-timer, I don't give a fuck press tour. It's so funny. It's so funny. I mean, people are asking legitimate questions, and he's like, fuck you, and I think that's funny. Because he's just this old dude who just keeps pumping out good movies. Like, he said, hey, some of the stuff isn't historically accurate. And Ridley Scott was like, yeah, well, were you fucking there? I don't think you were there. Then shut the fuck up. It's like, obviously, you don't have to be there to know about something. But it's very funny, so I support him saying this. Where they said, hey, the French people aren't thrilled with this movie. And Ridley Scott's like, well, you know what? The French don't really like themselves very much now, do they? Once again, Ridley Scott, W. Can't be stopped, this man. Good stuff, I say. Good stuff. Yes, better be my village. I just ran all the way to the wrong one. Wouldn't that be a way to end the episode? It is. Okay, well, 6:57. What do we have for 6:57? $657 AD. Grimold the Elder, mayor of the Palace of Austrasia, is deposed by Clovis II, king of Neustria. He executes him and his son, but then he dies shortly after and is succeeded by his eldest son, Clothar III, aged 5. Tong campaigns against the Western Turks. Emperor Gaozong to fetch a military campaign. He annexes the Western Turkic Khanate. And then commissions a pharmacology publication of official Materia Medicina. Ooh, but we got something from the Americas properly dated. Let's go. Of course, of the Second Tikal Kalakmul War. I don't even know about this. The Snake Lord makes a direct attack against Tikal itself, driving out its new ruler, Nun Ujul Shak, establishing Kalakmul as a regional superpower. The one-time heir apparent to rule Tikal swears his allegiance to the new overlord. The Snake Lord. Hold on, let's go deeper dive on the Snake Lord. We have the funeral mask of the Snake Lord. He was in the Snake Dynasty. That's sick. I don't know. I think the Snake Dynasty clears. All right, well, next episode, I guess it's concrete MCU time. Bye.